Alright, so here's where we left off for part 2. Go ahead and give you the answer to the one that you tried. So pull this out, the greatest common factor, 3x, and then it's x plus 3. Over here pulling out a negative 5, and it is x plus 3. Notice our parentheses match, so we're going to put our greatest common factors, and you should get 3x minus 5. It's your first set of parentheses, and your second set is x plus 3. So there's your final answer. Go ahead and try the next section. Let's do one together here. So when we always want to look to see if the first and the last are perfect squares, because maybe it's something that we could easily factor. Maybe it's a perfect square trinomial. So what we would do is look to see, could I take the square root of this, could I take the square root of this, and simplify it that way, and would it, if I were to FOIL, get me that middle term? So that's a quick way to look at it. So if I were to take the square root of the beginning, I'd get 3x, and then what times what would give me 49? Square root of 49 is 7. And noticing that this sign is a negative, so if I were to make that a negative, the same as that sign there, and if I were to have that times itself, so I could write it like this, or if I wrote it as 3x minus 7 squared, it's the same thing. Two of them written out, or that 1 squared. And yes, if I were to FOIL that, I get negative 21x plus negative 21x, which would get me negative 42 if I add those together. So go ahead and try, you're going to try those down there, so let's do this one. So square root, they're perfect squares. Square root of 16 is 4. It has the variable, square root of x squared is x. Square root of 81 is 9, and we look to see what sign is here, and it's a positive, so we're going to put a positive here, and you can just put it squared or write it out, two of those. So go ahead and try C and D, very similar to the ones above, doing that square root, trying the perfect square trinomial. So pause that video and try those two. So your answers that you should get would be 3x plus 4 squared, or written out twice, and D should be 5x minus 3. Make sure it's a minus, squared. And then the last thing that we're going to talk about is difference of two squares. So that is when I have no middle term, and the reason why that middle term cancels out is because we have a plus and we have a minus. And we did one of those at the beginning of our lesson when we were FOILing. Actually, that was a previous lesson. So that last example, E, see how we did, it had a plus 5 and a minus 5, and they canceled their middle terms out, so there's no middle term left. So we're kind of doing the opposite here of going the other direction. So what we're going to do is we're going to do kind of the square root like we did above. Square root of d squared is d. Square root of 36 is 6. And we're going to have one's a plus and one's a minus. So that way that middle term cancels out. So let's try the other one. Square root of 9 is 3. Square root of d squared is d. Square root of 64 is 6. So we know no, it's not 6, silly me. It's 8. There we go. Going too fast. Slow down. So we know that these are going to be our terms, 3d and 8. And then we have a plus and we have a minus. And if I were to check that by refoiling, I would wind up with 9d squared minus 64. So pause, try C and D on your own, and then press play to check. So your answer should be for C, x minus 7 and x plus 7. Again, doing the square root. We're thinking about what this would be. Square root over here, 5x plus 4 and 5x minus 4. And it doesn't always have to be the plus first or the minus first, just as long as one is a plus and the other is a minus. So we'll take a lot more time with factoring. Oh, hold on, I'm going to sneeze. Goodness gracious, sorry. So we'll take a lot more time practicing factoring because it, again, is one of the most important concepts that you have down before you move on to the next course. So we'll be taking a lot of factoring mastery quizzes to make sure that you have factoring down before we move on to harder things where factoring is expected, that you already know how to do that. So practice, practice, practice.